On Sunday, the Cuban Parliament meets in an extraordinary session to debate the incorporation of 3 new laws to the island's legal system. The government of Finland announced a formal decision to apply for membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization despite Moscow's warnings. Palestinians commemorate the 74th anniversary of the Nakba or Catastrophe Day with protests and marches in Palestine and other parts of the world. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Cuban Parliament meets on Sunday in an extraordinary session to debate the incorporation of 3 new laws to the island's legal system. The 5th extraordinary session of the National Assembly will analyze the draft laws of the Penal Code, Criminal Execution, Protection of Constitutional Rights, Protection System for Literary and Artistic creation, and the general law for the protection of cultural heritage and natural heritage. The parliamentarians are also expected to analyze the progress of the economic and social strategy, mainly in relation to the monetary reorganization of the largest of the Caribbean islands, as well as the new code of the families. The extraordinary session of the National Assembly opened on Saturday, May 14th, and will last until Monday, May 16th, due to its extensive legislative agenda. Thousands of Bari indigenous people took to the streets in the Colombian town of Tibu to denounce the murder of Camilo Boru Boschira, a community member of the Bari, in April 2022. They protested against being victims of murders by illegal armed groups, forced displacement, threats to their leaders, and the use of minors for criminal actions. They also demanded that the Colombian government comply with the collective territorial rights, economic, social, cultural, and environmental rights, as well as respect the international humanitarian law, which allows them to exercise autonomy and self-determination in their ancestral territories. The AA expressed concern about the delicate situation of the public order and the escalation of the armed conflicts in the indigenous territories.
With more over 1,000 people here, we have to make the call at the Colombian level and the international level in this rally, that the Bari people are being killed in our territory, in our ancestral territory, that we have inhabited for centuries.
Argentina's monthly inflation rate surged to the highest level in decades, triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. As Latin America's third largest economy, Argentina's monthly inflation rate is around the same level as the United States and Western countries are witnessing in a year. The rate increase comes after the country's statistics agency earlier on Thursday released data showing consumer prices rose to 6% in April, bringing it to the highest annual level since 1992. Argentinians are counting the cause of the highest inflation in decades. According to the latest official figures in Argentina, inflation in the following month will decelerate gradually from its peak in March. While social movements brought Buenos Aires to a standstill on Thursday, thousands of protesters demanded a shift in social and economic policy as rampant inflation hits lower-income families the hardest. Lula, with 44% of voting intentions, continues to lead polls for elections in Brazil. With respect to the presidential runoff, the survey indicates that Lula would win with 54% and Bolsonaro would reach 35% of the votes. Former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva continues to lead the voting intentions in Brazil for next October's elections, according to the results of a new survey by the Institute of Social, Political, and Economic Research. With an error margin of 3.2%, the survey shows that the support for the leader of the Workers' Party gives him a chance of winning in the first round. According to the survey, Lula showed the same percentage of voting intentions as the one published weeks ago, while his main opponent Bolsonaro increased by 1%, regarding the possible outcome of the presidential runoff. The poll indicates that Lula would win with 54% and Bolsonaro would reach 35%, an increase of 1 percentage point over the previous poll. In the United States, a gunman has killed 10 people and wounded 3 at a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York State. The gunman, who was armed with an assault-style rifle and wearing body armor, was arrested after the shooting spree. Officials said he drove to Buffalo from his home in a New York State county hours away to launch the attack, which he broadcast on the internet. 11 of the victims were black and 2 were white. The suspect was later identified as Peyton Gendron, a white Caucasian of Conklin, a New York State community about 320 kilometers southeast of Buffalo, according to the authorities. Gendron has now been charged with first-degree murder, which carries a sentence of life without parole. He is being held without bail. Thousands of activists take to the streets in the United States Saturday to demand access to safe and legal abortion. The protests come in response to a draft final ruling leaked to the media, showing that the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court is considering to overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, which guaranteed legal access to abortion nationwide in 1973. Demonstrations have been announced in New York City, Chicago, Washington, Los Angeles, and Austin, among other cities, in addition to hundreds of small mobilizations across the country. Democrat governors have pushed through measures to codify abortion rights into federal law, an action seen by Republicans as an attempt to weaken them electorally. We are taking a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The government of Finland announced a formal decision to apply for membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization despite Moscow's warnings. The President of Finland, Sauli Niinisto, and the Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, delivered the news on Sunday from the Presidential Palace in Helsinki. The government's Foreign and Security Policy Committee finalized the report on the accession, which will be submitted to the General Courts after approval by the entire government. The Swedish government is also expected to make an equivalent announcement on Tuesday. The Russian Foreign Ministry repeatedly warned that the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO would entail consequences both for their bilateral relations with Russia and for the whole European security architecture. Moscow assured that Sweden and Finland would be potential targets for the Russian army after hosting NATO troops on their territories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a law allowing him to ban opposition political parties, especially those promoting a pro-Russian stance. The Ukrainian Parliament confirmed this, adding that the law will protect the country from political organizations with anti-Ukrainian nature. Last Tuesday, 330 deputies of the Verkhovna Rada, as the Ukrainian Parliament is known, approved the bill which, in the words of the Deputy Speaker of the legislative body, Yelena Kondratyuk, aims to outlaw activities that undermine the sovereignty and integration of the nation. Already last March, the head of state had suspended, in the middle of the National Security and Defense Council, all activities of opposition parties. With these sanctions, organizations such as the Opposition Platform for Life, the left-wing opposition, and the Progressive Socialist Party of Ukraine, among others, could be banned from the national territory. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed today that all countries capable of pursuing an independent policy are currently under attack by the United States. The senior official stated at the 30th meeting of the Russian Foreign and Defense Policy Council that those who do not agree will be punished, that not only Russia will be punished, though even more because Russians are offering resistance. All those who are capable of pursuing an independent policy are attacked. The head of Moscow's diplomacy warned about the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States, which is focused against China and by means of which Washington intends to include India in a solid and reliable way in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and make it a part of its partners. He pointed out that likewise, in the spirit of the Monroe Doctrine, the White House wants to determine the rules according to which Latin America should live. The Russian foreign minister noted that Western countries are no longer perceived as an ideal of freedom and democracy, and with their predatory actions have eroded their reputation as a reliable partner.
Dissident countries will be punished by the United States. It's clear that it's not just about Russia. We fight back. We fight back, however. But everybody able to carry out an independent policy is under attack. For instance, the Indo-Pacific strategy promoted by Washington. It has a direct anti-Chinese orientation and aims to include firmly and reliably India in the U.S. NATO bloc. The U.S. wants to dictate standards of living to Latin America in line with the Monroe Doctrine. The question is whether Americans are able to follow the key principles of the UN Charter saying United Nations should rely on the sovereign equality of the states.
An attack from Ukraine leaves one person wounded in the Russian town of Ossetia in Belgorod province. The governor of the province of Belgorod, Vyacheslav Gladkov, said the attack occurred Sunday and assured that the person wounded will receive all the necessary medical assistance to ensure his recovery. The Russian official declared he expects to know more details about the incident, which he will communicate to the national authorities and the citizens of the province. The authorities of South Ossetia called for a referendum on the accession to Russia on July 17th. Outgoing President of South Ossetia, Anatoly Bibilov, signed a decree on holding this referendum. The decision was made in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. The move responds to the historical aspiration of the people of the Republic of South Ossetia to rejoin Russia. In the referendum, the population of the Caucasian nation will have to answer the question, do you support the unification of South Ossetia with Russia? The call also comes as the candidate for the presidency of South Ossetia and leader of the Nikas party, Alan Gagolyev, was elected president by heading vote count with 56.09%. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Palestinians commemorate the 74th anniversary of the Nakba or Catastrophe Day with protests and marches in Palestine and other parts of the world. The march on the occasion of the date commemorating the illegal creation of Israel and the expulsion of the Palestinians from their lands in May 1948 stretched from Al-Katiba Square in the city of Gaza to the United Nations Organization's headquarters under the slogan "End of Israeli Apartheid" and "Freedom for Gaza." Several European citizens have also been the scene of large-scale demonstrations in solidarity with Palestinians and to call for an end to the Israeli attacks on the besieged Gaza Strip. Mobilizations were also registered in the United States, Australia, and other countries around the world. These events also pay tribute to the Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was shot dead by Israeli forces during a raid in the occupied West Bank earlier this week. In Lebanon, parliamentary elections continue to be held despite a severe economic crisis. This Sunday, over 3.6 million people are called to elect a new parliament in Lebanon in a key day for the future of the country that began without serious incidents and with a significant attendance of voters. These polls are being held in the middle of a severe economic crisis that began in the country at the end of 2019, leaving nearly 80% of the population below the poverty line and driving down the value of the local currency by more than 90%. Among the duties of the new legislative branch will be to elect the next president of the Republic at the end of this year and to confirm the composition of the government that will take over the leadership of the country after the elections. Somalia's long-awaited elections take place on Sunday amid heavy security measures after repeated postponements since 2021. Local media reported that approximately 319 legislators from the two houses of parliament gathered in a joint session began to vote around 3 o'clock in the afternoon local time in an armored zone of the international airport of Mogadishu, guarded by a strong security device organized by the African Union and curfew decreed since last night to prevent terrorist attacks. Also, the media detailed that among the aspirants is the Somali president, Abdullahi Mohamed Farmajo, who will face the former Prime Minister of the country, Hassan Ali Kaire, as well as former presidents Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and Sharif Sheikh Ahmed. Ethiopia's local universities and Regional Bureau of Statistics published a report claiming that nearly 7,000 civilians were killed in the Amara region between June and December 2021 by fighters from the Tigray region in the north of the African nation. The study, which has been rejected by the Tigray government, states that 6,986 people died in the neighboring province, of which 3,000 were wounded with firearms. The research also records the discovery of mass graves in different parts of the Amara region. Despite the seriousness of the information contained in the report, no evidence has been provided so far, although academics involved in the study claim to have audiovisual materials that would support the data provided in the report. Hundreds of Muslims poured into the streets of the northwestern Nigerian city of Sokoto in protest over the arrest of two students following the murder of a Christian student accused of blasphemy. Muslim youth took to the streets of the city, lighting bonfires and demanding the release of the two detained suspects, despite the earlier deployment of policemen to maintain order. Deborah Samuel, a student from Sheishu Shagari College of Education, was stoned to death on Thursday and her body burned by a mob of Muslim students of the college after she posted content on social media they deemed insulted the Prophet Muhammad. Nigeria is roughly divided between Muslims and Christians, but religious tensions and deadly clashes are not uncommon, particularly in North. In Chad, hundreds of protesters took to the streets of the capital and other towns in an anti-French protest that saw the destruction of some French-linked businesses. The protest was called by Chadian civil society coalition Wakitama to denounce France's backing of the Transitional Military Council that seized power following the battlefield death of President Idriss Déby in April 2021. Protesters burned at least two flags of the former colonial power and vandalized several total petrol stations, a symbol of France. The demonstration had been authorized by the authorities. A strong police presence surrounded the procession and was deployed in the city. Chad's capital is the central command hub for France's counter-terrorism operation for the West Africa region. Around 1,000 French troops are based there. Sri Lankan lawyers gathered outside President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's office in Colombo to protest against the country's dire economic and political crisis and demand his resignation. Sri Lanka announced a default on its $51 billion foreign debt Tuesday as the island nation grappled with its worst economic crisis in memory and with escalating protests demanding the government's resignation. Acute food and fuel shortages, as well as long daily electricity blackouts, have brought widespread suffering to the country's 22 million people in its most painful downturn since independence in 1948. We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.